Good morning. Long ago, in the breathtaking lands of southern Chile, nestled between towering volcanoes and emerald lakes, there lived a people who thrived in harmony with nature, the Mapuche. Their villages dotted the landscape, their lives intertwined with the rhythms of the earth, the rivers, the ever-watchful gods that ruled over the land. And among them was Princess Licarayén, a maiden of extraordinary beauty and kindness. Her hair was as dark as the night. Her eyes reflected the deep blue of Lake Laquié. She was beloved not only by her people, but by nature itself. It was said that when she walked through the forests, the birds sang sweeter. When she touched the water, the fish danced beneath the ripples. But peace doesn't last forever. And one day, the ground began to tremble. A low, ominous rumble echoed through the valley, and the sky darkens with a thick shroud of smoke. The great Osorno Volcano, which had long been slumbering, now threatened to awaken. Fear spread like wildfire through the Mapuche lands, and they knew that the wrath of the volcano meant destruction, fire, and death. So the elders gathered, whispering amongst themselves, seeking answers in the ancient ways. And they turned to their wisest machi, the spiritual leaders. And he cast his gaze to the heavens, and he listened to the whispers of the wind, and finally he spoke with a grave certainty. The gods are angry. Their fury will not be soothed until the most precious treasure of our people is offered in sacrifice. And a silence fell over the village as realization dawned. The most precious treasure? There was no doubt. Licarayén, the jewel of her people. The news spread quickly, and hearts filled with sorrow. The young warriors, her father, even the birds that perched on her window, mourned the fate that had now been sealed. But Licarayén, graceful and courageous, didn't flinch. And so the preparations began. The village gathered at the foot of this mighty volcano, where an altar was built, adorned with flowers and feathers and other offerings of gratitude. And Licarayén, dressed in pure white, stepped forward, her face radiant with calm acceptance. As the final words of the ritual were spoken, a miracle unfolded. Just as the sacred blade was to descend, the heavens burst open with blinding light, and from the very heart of this storm emerged a giant white condor, its wings stretching wider than the tallest trees. With a single graceful movement, that great bird swooped down, gathered Licarayén in its claws, and lifted her gently into the sky. And the people watched in silent awe as the condor soared higher and higher, carrying their beloved princess into the clouds. Moments later, the volcano's fury ceased. The earth, once trembling with anger, grew still. The sky, once blackened with smoke, turned a soft golden hue. From where Licarayén's tears had fallen, a majestic snow-capped peak began to rise. The magnificent Mount Puntiagudo, standing forever in tribute to her sacrifice. The Osorno volcano, now calmed, lay quiet once more, and the land flourished anew. Now the legend of Licarayén lives on, whispered by the wind, sung by the rivers, told by the elders beneath the starlit skies. And they say that on certain nights, when the moonlight touches the white peak of Puntiagudo, you can see the spirit of Licarayén watching over her people as she always had, a guardian of peace and love. Now, the legends of a place can tell us a lot about the people and the societies that call it home. And it's perhaps no surprise that the legends of the Mapuche people of Northern Patagonia center so faithfully on the theme of dedication to nature. You just need to look around as the ship sails in between the fjords to understand. Northern Patagonia, stretching across southern Chile and Argentina, is a land where towering volcanoes, deep fjords, ancient forests, and rushing rivers create a landscape as breathtaking as it is untamed. This is a place where nature reigns supreme, where human settlements are small and scattered, and where the rhythm of life is dictated by the land itself. The geography of Northern Patagonia is a dramatic mix of snow-capped peaks, dense temperate rainforests, and labyrinthine waterways. On the Chilean side, the Aysén region is carved by the Pacific's fjords, which we're going to be cruising. Glacial meltwaters feed these stunning rivers like the Baker and the Simpson, where islands and inlets create a landscape that feels almost prehistoric. The Northern Patagonian ice field, one of the largest in the world, gives birth to colossal glaciers. San Rafael, which you can access via a boat tour through the Aysén fjords, for example. This is a land that has been shaped by both fire and ice. Glaciers carved out its deep valleys, while active volcanoes like Osorno, Chacabuco, Michimayuda continue to shape it today. But despite its harsh and unpredictable climate, Northern Patagonia teems with life. The combination of the Andean mountains, coastal fjords, vast forests creates an ecosystem rich in diversity, supporting species that you'll find nowhere else in the world. In the forests of Aysén and Los Lagos, ancient lenga and cohue trees tower over a world inhabited by elusive creatures like the pudu, which is the world's smallest deer. The Andean condor, with its massive wingspan, soars above the cliffs, while the huemul, which is a rare Andean deer and Chile's national symbol, roams the remote valleys. The region's rivers and fjords, well, they're sanctuaries for aquatic life. The Baker and the Fatalofu rivers are home to trout, salmon, and then the frigid waters of the Pacific support sea lions, dolphins, even orcas. The Golfo de Corcovado, which is just off the coast, is one of the best places in the world to spot blue whales, which is the largest animals on Earth. And people have lived amidst this natural paradise for centuries. Of course, the indigenous tribes first, and then the Europeans moved in. But here's something interesting. Unlike further north in Chile, or in Peru, or in Argentina, or, well, about anywhere else around here, you don't get a particularly Spanish vibe about the place. Instead, this part of Chile feels somewhat German. The mid-1800s were a time of political and economic instability in Germany. And with the revolutions of 1848, industrialization and overpopulation making life difficult for many, it wasn't a great place to be. Chile, meanwhile, was eager to develop its southern territories, which were sparsely populated and covered in dense forests and wild rivers. So in 1845, the Chilean president, Manuel Bulnes, passed a law of selective immigration, which invited European settlers, especially Germans, to help colonize and develop southern Chile. The government offered land, financial support, and the promise of a new life, and it attracted craftsmen, farmers, professionals who were seeking some stability and some opportunity in a new continent. Between 1850 and 1875, thousands of German families made the long and perilous journey across the Atlantic, then down the coast of South America and round to Chile. And many arrived through Puerto Montt, a city founded in 1853 specifically to welcome and receive these settlers. And from there, they ventured into the untamed landscapes of the Lake District, settling in Puerto Varas, Frutillar, Osorno, Valdivia. Despite the challenges, the German settlers transformed the region. They built sturdy wooden houses in Bavarian and Alpine styles, many of which are still standing today, especially if you go out to Frutillar or Puerto Varas. They introduced new crops, dairy farming, brewing traditions. They turned southern Chile into a really important center for cheese, beer, and pastries, and that is a legacy that is still enjoyed today. One of their biggest contributions was education and industry. The Germans established schools, breweries, mills, factories, and they brought Chile's south into the modern age. In Valdivia, they created shipyards and breweries, while in Osorno, they developed agriculture and cattle ranching, which remain to this day the economic pillars of the region. Today, the German influence is unmistakable in this part of Chile. Towns like Frutillar host the annual Music Weeks festival, celebrating classical music, a tradition brought in by German immigrants. And the wooden churches of Puerto Varas, Chiloé, the craft breweries of Valdivia, the apple strudels and the kuchen in the local bakeries, they all speak to a cultural fusion that has lasted for generations. So now that we've got an idea of what might be awaiting us, let's open the portal and collect our next 3 ports. So today we're going to talk about Puerto Montt, Castro, and Puerto Chacabuco, which is a great name. Okay, let's start with Puerto Montt. This is our first upcoming port in the fjords, in the Lake District. Gorgeous sail in, by the way, and we'll start to get that probably this evening as we get into the protected waters. You can see it is a tender port, which I know is a highlight for most of us. And they've got a pretty modern platform here, much, much easier to get off the ship here in Puerto Montt than we had yesterday. And so I think everybody should feel very comfortable and confident if you do want to get off. You get off onto this floating platform, and then you walk up a ramp, and you walk towards a small terminal building, which is their cruise terminal building. Inside that, there is usually Wi-Fi, so hopefully that will be on tomorrow. There's a toilet, and then outside of there, you can pick up taxis if you would like any onward transportation. To show you on a map, we are going to be where the ship is. The smaller square is where we are tendering into. And then it's roughly a 30-minute walk if you were to walk into the downtown area of Puerto Montt. Now, some people won't stay in Puerto Montt at all. They'll just jump in a taxi and they'll go out to other areas in the district. But for those of you wanting to spend the day in Puerto Montt, you're looking at roughly a 30-minute walk. The tender ride itself, 10 to 15 minutes, so relatively short. All right, let's get into our top 10. Our Lady of Mount Carmel Cathedral is Puerto Montt's oldest building. It's been standing firm since 1872, despite earthquakes and, of course, despite time itself. Originally, this was a parish church, but it was elevated to cathedral status in 1939 when the Diocese of Puerto Montt was created. It's a neoclassical design. It's pretty simple, very German in that sense. It's very elegant, though. Striking wooden dome and columns crafted from native Alerce wood. So it's durable, and this wood is practically legendary in Chilean architecture. You find it all over the place. Inside, the atmosphere is peaceful. They've got beautiful stained glass windows. There's a real sense of history woven into this place, and conveniently it's located right on the main square, so it's a really easy stop whilst exploring Puerto Montt. Now, as the waterfront road just curves around to the right, that would take you to a shopping mall. There's a public square dedicated to the German colonizers who settled here in Puerto Montt. It gives the area its distinctive Germanic feel. And the main focal point of this square is this 5-piece statue, which you could even walk within and become part of the scene for a fun photo. It's called the Monumento a la Colonización Alemana, and it pays tribute to the German immigrants who helped shape Puerto Montt in the 19th century. Dramatic bronze sculpture of a family stepping bravely into what was the unknown, complete with a dog as well, because every adventure needs a dog. From one sculpture to another, Escultura Sentados Frente al Mar is Puerto Montt's most famous and, let's be honest, slightly bizarre sculpture. Locals call it Los Enamorados, which means the lovers. These oversized, wide-eyed figures staring out to sea have sparked plenty of debate. Are they romantic? Are they melancholic? Are they just really into the view? It was installed in 2002, and the sculpture by an artist called Robinson Barria represents the city's connection with the ocean, but some say it actually looks like a couple waiting for a really late bus. Love it or find it puzzling, it is Puerto Montt's icon. It is a must-see for a quirky photo stop, especially if you've been working on a diet, because sitting next to these two is going to make you look like a right skinny mini. The Museo Histórico de Puerto Montt Juan Pablo II. Nice short title there. Offers a deep dive into the city's history, covering the indigenous cultures, German colonization, and the devastating 1960 earthquake that reshaped the landscape here. It was named after Pope John Paul II's 1987 visit, and it is packed with artifacts, old photos, quirky exhibits that make history feel alive. It's a great spot to get a sense of how Puerto Montt evolved from this wild frontier into a key gateway to Patagonia. And a bonus is that entry is free, and it is an easy walk-in from the port. And it's closed whilst we're there. So it's definitely free. I don't know why I put a price there, because it is free. Anyway, also free, this place I love. Now we've gone across to Puerto Varas now, so we've taken a 25-minute drive, okay? 25-minute drive up to Puerto Varas, which is on the lake. Gorgeous place. More gorgeous really than Puerto Montt. And so if you're looking for your ideal spot to go to, probably getting the 25-minute drive and spending your day here is going to give you an even more memorable and wonderful day. This is my sort of place. This is what happens when someone with a few too many interests and not enough friends goes shopping. This is a wild collection of the most random mishmash of artifacts, and it creates quite the memorable attraction. Calling it a museum in the educational sense is a bit of a push, unless it is educating people on the consequences of hoarding. But museum in the traditional sense of creating a space within which to display a collection, it definitely ticks that box, and in a remarkably fun way. And it is right on the lakefront, so you can then take a beautiful walk along the waterfront to process what you've just seen. Iglesia del Sagrado Corazón de Jesús is the postcard perfect church of Puerto Varas. It stands tall on a hill. It's got a view over the town and Lake Laquije. It was built in 1915 by German settlers, and it's got this distinctive red and white color scheme that looks straight out of Bavaria. And the architecture is inspired by the Marienkirche in Germany. But the setting, surrounded by volcanoes, it couldn't be more Chilean. If you step inside, you get this moment of peace. You admire the wooden interiors and soak in the history of this town's European roots. Whether you're religious or you just love a good view, this is really worth the short walk uphill. But you can also see it's tired. You feel the age of it. And the closer you get, the more you really feel that. Galleria Bosque Nativo is a hidden gem in Puerto Varas. It's perfect for those who love art with a local touch. This charming gallery showcases the work of Chilean and Patagonian artists, featuring everything from paintings right the way through to sculptures to handcrafted jewelry. And the name, Native Forest Gallery, it fits because so much of the artwork on display in here is inspired by the region's wild landscapes. It's a pretty peaceful place to have a wander, appreciate the creativity of southern Chile, maybe even take home a unique souvenir. Whether you love art, just looking for something different, this gallery offers you a refreshing break from the usual tourist trail. But the next one, you're gonna love it. They're always open. The Petroé Falls. Oh, it is one of those places that just makes you stop and say, wow. And this is set within the Vicente Pérez Rosales National Park. And these rushing turquoise rapids just carve their way through ancient lava fields. The Osorno Volcano just towers dramatically over them in the background, and you've got this contrast of white water against black volcanic rock, and it's not a difficult hike to do. It's relatively short. There are easy trails, making this a breeze to explore. You will want to bring your camera because the viewpoints are spectacular. And whether we get a sunny day or a misty day, that actually doesn't matter. These falls have a wild energy that is hard to resist. This is nature at its most photogenic, and it is just a very short trip from Puerto Varas. They're not high waterfalls, but they spread in such a mesmerizing way. Okay, I want to go back to Puerto Varas itself for a moment, because if you were looking at the picture of Petroé Falls and you were admiring the view of the volcano in the background, then there is another great volcano view that you don't want to miss. And this one is very convenient if you're heading into the lakeside town of Puerto Varas. There's a haunting statue on the lakefront. And that statue represents that rather tragic legend of the Princess Licarayén that I told you at the beginning of this presentation. And it's a dramatic statue for an equally dramatic viewpoint across the lake and over to the mountains. And the two peaks that are visible are Volcan Osorno at 2,652 meters, and the shorter, less conical Volcan Chacabuco at 1,974 meters, which erupted last just a decade ago. And by the way, a tip for you, those of you with a camera, to get a photo this good, when Licarayén is there in good shot and the mountain is so close to her, what you want to do is you step away from her and you zoom in with your camera. Because the way lenses work is that they will magnify the background by a greater degree than the foreground. And so essentially, it brings the two closer together. And then you get these amazing photos where it looks like she is right there at the mountainside. Final tip for you, we're now going to go out to Frutia, which is on the other coast of the lake. And this is like stepping into a Bavarian fairy tale, except, of course, with a Chilean twist. This charming lakeside town, settled by German immigrants in the 19th century, is famous for its timbered houses, delicious Kuchen, which is a German-style cake, and breathtaking views of the volcano, the Osorno Volcano in particular, across the lake. But its real showstopper locally is the theatre, the Teatro del Lago, also quite a German thing. This world-class concert hall is built right over the water, and it is a masterpiece of wood and glass blending perfectly into its stunning surroundings. And it's known for that Frutia Musical Festival, the musical weeks that I mentioned before, and they draw artists from all around the world. And even though we're not going to catch a performance here, the architecture alone is worth a visit, and they do offer tours if you are interested. Now, I'm not putting up a map of all of those highlights together for this one because they are all so spread out that in order to give you a map, you're not actually going to see much of the relation between them. So let's move in to our next port of call, which is Castro. Castro is on the Gran Island of Chiloé, which is one of the largest islands in the entirety of South America. I think it's the second largest island in the continent. It's an inland island in the Lake District here of Northern Patagonia. And it is another one of our tender ports. Check out this tender platform. I'm a little confused by this, I will be honest. I did ask the question, and I got the answer, and this is the answer. But I seem to remember there being a different tender pier that is just over here and flat. So I have no idea why they've asked us to use this one, which is, as you can see, a steep-ish ramp. And so quietly on my microphone, I'm hoping that we might end up using the other one, but that's not our intention. Our intention is to be using this one, which is why I've shown you this one on the photograph. We will pull up alongside here, and then you'll hop out onto the ramp, and then you walk up the rest of it, and then you get up to the sort of little terminal area. So that's what to expect when you get off the tender. At the top, they have, well, you can already see all of the coaches there waiting for any tours, but they've got tourist information. There are little shops nearby. They've got toilets, and they've got taxis as well, just waiting on the other side of the port area. To show you it on a map, we're going to be waiting around here. Actually, I think we're going to be waiting here. Then we come into where the little square is, and then it's a really short, call it 10-minute walk to get into, call it a downtown. This is a really small port. In fact, the next two ports that we're going to talk about are really small ports. And that's great, actually. It obviously makes it harder to find specific highlights to share, but actually the highlight of these small ports is just being there. It's being there and feeling the atmosphere and walking around without getting lost. And when you're ready, coming back having been somewhere that so few people go, and even fewer have really heard of it. People don't know these places exist, and they are set in the middle of absolute beauty. But there's not a huge amount there. So very achievable for everybody to head on out and just do something in this little local port area. Okay, we'll start with the church. The Iglesia de San Francisco in Castro isn't just a church. This is a vibrant piece of Chiloé, that's the island's rich tapestry. Perched proudly in the heart of Castro, this striking yellow and purple wooden marvel is one of 4 UNESCO World Heritage churches in this very small city. In fact, Castro is home to several of Chiloé's approximately 70 wooden churches. These 4 recognized for their outstanding universal value. And you can go inside, you step inside, you're enveloped by this warm feel of the native woods, the soaring arches. And really, if you think about it, this is a testament to the island's unique blend of indigenous craftsmanship and European influences. It is an iconic landmark and a captivating glimpse into the soul of the island of Chiloé. So you could turn your day in Castro into a little bit of a church tour, but it's an architectural church tour, and they have been recognized for their impact by UNESCO. Is it closed? Sunday, well, they have services on Sunday. So if you wanted, we're there on a Sunday, you would have to go to the service rather than, we're there on a Saturday, open. There we go. Ding, ding, ding. Fake news, huh? The Museo Municipal de Castro is a small but fascinatingly open stop for anybody who wants to dive into the unique history of Chiloé in particular, packed with artifacts, old photographs, exhibits that tell the story of the island's indigenous heritage, colonial past, seafaring traditions. And you find everything here, from handmade tools, traditional costumes, to, this is cute, the scale models of Chiloé's famous wooden churches. And so I love these little models. I love them of little theatres. I love the little ship models. And here they've made them for their churches. As you can see from the photo, this is not a flashy museum. But it is full of charm. It's full of insight. Perfect for understanding what makes this island so special. If you love quirky local history, it's well worth a visit whilst in Castro. And it is free to visit. Also free to visit, Pazuello Martin Ruiz de Gamboa is a perfect spot to take in one of Castro's most iconic views. Out over the waterfront, you're facing an area called Gamboa, and you will see the famous palafitos. And these are colorful wooden houses perched on stilts along the waterfront. And these traditional homes, once belonging to fishermen, are a Chiloé classic, and they reflect the island's deep connection to the sea. And from this viewpoint, standing, it's so close, you just walk a kilometer across the town, and you get this great view of them. You can sail between them, by the way, take a boat, but this is great. Gives you that picture-perfect scene. It changes with the water level as well, so as it goes up and down, you want to take a photo here, but then take a moment to soak in this scenery, to appreciate how life in Castro has always revolved around the sea. And if you want to get even closer, then there are locals who offer boat tours, and they'll take you right up to it. But you don't need to take the boat tour to get a good view. And then we'll go shopping. So Mall Paseo Chiloé is Castro's modern shopping hub. Its construction stirred up plenty of local controversy. Some people say that its towering structure clashes with the city's traditional wooden architecture. Others welcome the convenience of a full-scale shopping mall in the heart of Chiloé. But inside, whatever you think of the architecture, you'll find big-name stores, you'll find a supermarket, restaurants, there's a cinema. It's ideal if you need a break from sightseeing. But the real highlight, actually, is you go onto the top floor and you get the views over the bay. So whether you love it or loathe it, this mall has undeniably changed Castro's skyline. It has brought a slice of modernity to an island that is steeped in tradition. But if you want a real taste of Chiloé's culture, then head to Feria Artesanal y Mercado Campesino Lio. This is a bustling market. It's a perfect spot to browse handmade wool textiles, wooden crafts, traditional Chilote souvenirs. And if you need a bite to eat, then you come back to the ship. And if you need a bite to eat, then the adjacent food market serves up fresh Chiloé seafood, including curanto, which is the island's most famous layered feast. The market's lively, it's colourful, it is a great place to chat with locals, and also, of course, to pick up something that is uniquely Chilote. Whether it's hand-woven poncho, wooden clogs, madreñas, this is the place to find it. Final tip for Castro. Plazuela el Tren is a small, but I think it's pretty charming square. Near the port, it's just on the other side of the port facility, and it pays tribute to a fascinating piece of local history, Chiloé's forgotten railway. Now, trains never really fully took over the island's transport, but this plaza features an old steam locomotive, and it's just a nod to the ambitious yet short-lived railway projects of the past. It's a great place for a quick stop. If the weather's nice, there are benches overlooking the waterfront, which make it a relaxing spot to watch the boats come and go. And if you are just thinking of taking a stroll near the port, then this is a fun place to visit and a reminder of what transport in Chiloé could have been. So this one is worth showing you on a map. You can see everything is really neatly close together. Of course, those of you heading out on tours, you're going to go much further and you're going to go out into nature largely. Okie dokie, next one. We're going to Puerto Chacabuco. I love it, Chacabuco. Okay, this is what it looks like in Puerto Chacabuco. And again, it's a modern tender pier, a pretty short ride in. You can see the ship waiting over there in the back, and it's like a finger pier. So usually they can have a couple of tenders alongside next to each other, and really nothing much in terms of port facilities apart from the toilet, which you can see just here. If I show you it on a map, this is what we got. Again, roughly a 10 to 15 minutes tender ride, and we tender through to where the rowing boat is, and then it is a really short walk into the town, 500 meters. It's about 7 minutes, and there really isn't very much there. This is one of the smallest of small places. It's maybe a gateway to get to some other places, some gorgeous places in Patagonia. For those of you staying local, then you're going to have a very peaceful day. It's not going to tire you out too much, but it's still worth getting off. You can already see from the map, this place is wrapped with green. It is a gorgeous setting. Puerto Chacabuco, tiny port town. Mostly it serves as this gateway to the fjords, the national parks beyond. There's not much to see in the town. I would say there's one thing to see in the town, and that is this. The Barco Varada Viña del Mar, a shipwrecked vessel. It rests just off the shore on the other side of the beachfront, and it has become an accidental landmark. It is not a historical relic. It is not some exciting pirate ship. It's just a boat that ran aground and never left. And over time, it's taken on some sort of ghostly charm with seabirds claiming it as their own. It's an unexpected sight in a quiet Patagonian outpost. But that's your photo moment in Chacabuco. Now, the Isen fjords are the definition of remote, untouched Patagonia, where glaciers, waterfalls, and misty peaks create a landscape straight out of a dream. So if you depart from Puerto Chacabuco, you will sail through these narrow channels that are lined with towering cliffs. You'll spot seabirds, there'll be sea lions, maybe even some dolphins skipping along the way. And then the real highlight is the San Rafael Glacier, which is one of the fastest moving glaciers in the world. And these waterfalls are cascading straight into the fjords. Now, the weather can be pretty moody, but that just adds to the magic. Whether it's sunshine or mist, this journey is all about pure, wild nature at its most spectacular. And actually, my preference is to see this in a storm. You want those moody clouds just glaring over you. Your photos will look phenomenal. And you can say how you survived this tempest that just ripped through the glaciers, and there were rocks here once, but you're going to come out like a real trooper. Puerto Aysén is the closest town to Puerto Chacabuco. And this is just a 15-minute drive inland, and this is your chance really to see local life in Chilean Patagonia. So this town is surrounded by steep green mountains. You've got these rushing rivers, and it's a laid-back spot. It's got great highlights worth exploring. And one of them is this bridge, the Presidente Ibáñez Suspension Bridge, which is one of Chile's longest. This is a must-see if you're heading out here, mainly because you've got to drive over it to get there. But take a moment on the bridge because it offers you wonderful views of the Aysén River. And then you can stroll along the waterfront promenade. You can visit the local market for fresh seafood and handmade crafts, or just soak up the town's relaxed pace. It is a little bit bigger than Chacabuco, but it is still a low-key spot. It's scenic, and then from there you head out into deeper into Patagonia's wilderness. Coyhaique is the regional capital of Chilean Patagonia. Again, it's relatively small, but it's a bit larger again. It's a livelier town, surrounded again by dramatic mountains and rivers and rolling steppe landscapes. And this one's about an hour's drive from Puerto Chacabuco. And this is the main hub for exploring the Aysén region. So the town's central plaza, known as the Plaza de Armas, like most places here, has a unique pentagonal shape. It's a great place to browse the local craft markets. But if you want really incredible views, and you're heading here, you want to go to the Mirador Marchant, M-A-R-C-H-A-N-T, or take a short trip out to the Simpson River Reserve. Another place, laid back, friendly locals, outdoor adventure vibes. This is the ideal gateway into Patagonia's rugged beauty. And I mentioned the Rio Simpson. So the Rio Simpson National Reserve is a Patagonian paradise, and it's just 17 kilometers, which is 10 miles or so, from Coyhaique. So you could do those two combined into one-day trip. Offers towering cliffs, lush rainforests, crystal clear rivers teeming with trout. And the Simpson River just cuts through these dramatic valleys. It makes it a hotspot for fly fishing, but also hiking and wildlife spotting. If you've got your binoculars already, then maybe even take your binoculars out here as well. Also, a really nice place for a quiet picnic spot. Now, of course, we can't take food off the ship, but you can get your food in one of the supermarkets and then take it out here and enjoy it, but stuff your sandwich with some extra worms. Eat local. And there's a visitor center as well where they've got a toilet should you suddenly need it after your cheese and worm lunch. But that's actually a really good place. Pop into the visitor center. It gives you a further insight into the park's unique ecosystem, from the native lenga forests, the endangered deer, like the huemul, which we mentioned earlier. And you could take this in any direction. You could take this as a very gentle stroll. You don't get so far, but you just soak up the atmosphere. Or you can take this as a pretty intense day, and you will come back feeling so invigorated and exhausted. But it's that sort of that invigoration where you are buzzing at the end of an adventure out here. I'm not going to show you a map of those because they are spread really quite far apart. I thought we'd finish today's presentation with another local legend. And one of the things I like best about legends is that despite their different characters, there's something very universal about them. I think they connect us. The sacrifice of Princess Licarayén, for example, it makes me think of the binding of Isaac. They're two very different traditions, two very different parts of the world, but they're tackling very similar moral challenges and, interestingly, coming to very similar conclusions. I can't think of a biblical equivalent to the next legend, but I think it's quite relatable nonetheless. And it comes from the island of Chiloé, where the port of Castro is. And I'll start this legend with a little bit of context. There were a lot of sailors passing through, and a lot of girls were getting pregnant. And this was a conservative society, and this was not ideal. Enter the Trauco. This small, gnome-like creature is one of the most mysterious and unsettling figures in Chilote folklore, and it is a legend that has endured for generations. The Trauco is a small humanoid being, no taller than about 2.5 feet, and he is grotesquely ugly. He's got a gnarled face, a thick beard, he wears tattered clothing that he made from moss and tree bark. He's not your first choice for a son-in-law. But despite his troll-like appearance, he's said to have an irresistible attraction, a supernatural charm that no woman can escape. Now, typically, you won't come across the Trauco because he lives deep in the dense forests, far away from human settlements, among the ancient Koe and Tepa trees. But if you find yourself lost in a forest and feel a sudden, unexplained drowsiness, it's the Trauco's magic pulling you into his world. And this is how he would seduce young women in his presence. He doesn't speak, he only murmurs and sighs. But his gaze alone is enough to bewitch any woman that crosses his path. And once under his spell, she falls into a trance and disappears into the woods, only to return later pregnant and unable to remember what happened. For centuries, the Trauco has been given as the explanation for unexpected pregnancies out of wedlock. It was the Trauco became the refrain. Now, I'd say to the ladies to be careful if heading out into the forest, but actually the men need to be wary too. Because while the Trauco is known for his unnerving power over women, he is said to be exceptionally dangerous to men. And it is said that if a man dares to mock him or insult him, then the Trauco strikes the ground 3 times with his staff, causing the offender to suffer a mysterious illness or perhaps even to die. Legends are cautionary tales that transcend cultures and generations. But for me, they also showcase something that is distinctly human. You don't need to believe them word for word. I'm not convinced many soon-to-be grandparents believed in the Trauco. But the existence of the legends tells us a lot more about ourselves than anything about the characters that we hide behind. And we're probably sailing with more Traucos than we realize. Thank you.